of 4.
She was just the ultimate mom. She always wanted the best for all of us.
Vanishes without a trace.
There was just no explanation for why she would be gone.
I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong.
Investigators are sent down a rabbit hole of suspects.
He said that the subject will never be found.
My mom did not have an enemy in the world other than him.
He disliked Patricia Kimmey. He hated Patricia Kimmey. He wished harm to come to Patricia Kimmey.
And discover grisly clues.
We found Patricia Kimmey's dentures.
We did find blood in the back of the truck.
And a money clip that was soaked in blood.
Until a shocking revelation.
She told investigators she knew where Patricia Kimmey was.
Changes everything.
We were shocked. That's one of the most evil things you can do.
Horton, Kansas, a tiny farm town deep in America's heartland.
Horton's a town of several hundred people. It's kind of a quiet town. Overall, there's not a lot of crime.
Horton is a rural area surrounded by cornfields. Everybody knows everybody. It's just a typical Midwest small town.
One fall day in 2009 turns into a nightmare when a daughter and son learn their mother, Pat Kimmey, has gone missing.
That Saturday, I got a phone call from my mom's best friend. And when I answered it, she said that she was concerned about my mom because they were supposed to go on a shopping trip that day, and my mom had actually never answered her calls. I knew that was very strange. I jumped in my truck and went out there to my mom's house. Her jacket was in the kitchen. Her purse was sitting there, and her phone. Everything was there but her. Very quickly after, my brother Tony arrived and said, "You need to call the sheriff. This is not right."
Mom, she did not go anywhere without her cell phone. It was in her pocket 24/7. So that was an immediate flag right there that something was wrong.
I can't explain the fear over that because there was just no explanation for why she would be gone.
Alarmed, Rita and Tony call 911. A sergeant arrives at the house at 9:45 a.m. He immediately notices troubling signs.
On the front porch, there was a wooden gate that went across this staircase, and this gate had been broken in half and had been pushed off the porch. I noticed that the door was standing open, but the deadbolt lock was out. A rug in the front door foyer was messed up as well, and it appeared to me that maybe there was some type of struggle. I immediately treated it as a crime scene.
Investigators head to the scene in search of clues as to what could have happened to Pat Kimmey.
The house was well arranged. There was no sign of really anything inside the house that had been disturbed.
There was a computer that had been left on.
The investigators were able to tell from looking at the computer the time of the last keystroke.
It was like 7:01 the night before was the last stroke on the computer. So we believe she was on the computer when maybe there was a knock on the door.
Detectives look for clues outside the home.
We found Patricia Kimmey's car and car keys were at the home. Obviously, she did not leave with her own vehicle, so she must have left with somebody else.
We also had discovered several droplets of blood on the gravel rock portion of the driveway.
After we looked at all the stuff, the door and the broken gate, the blood in the driveway, our thought process was, she's been kidnapped.
At that point, we still were considering a missing person. Maybe she was taken by force.
Police break the hard news to the family that they believe Pat has been kidnapped or possibly even a victim of foul play.
We had hope we're going to find her. But when they found the blood, it was just, your heart sank.
Who took her out of her home, and what did they want with her?
And I just leaned over and said, Rita, do you think she's coming back? And Rita got tears in her eyes and said, no, I don't believe she is.
Born in Kansas in 1951, Pat's youth was full of joy.
She was a very big farm girl at heart.
She grew up on a farm. She loved animals and always wanted to be a veterinarian.
In her late teens, Pat fell in love.
My mom met my father, Eugene Kimmey, in high school, so they started dating. Nobody loved him like she did.
In 1971, Pat and Eugene got married. Eugene ran the Kimmey sawmill he had inherited, while Pat was a devoted stay-at-home mom to their 4 kids.
There wasn't anything that meant more to her than her family. She was just the ultimate mom. She always wanted the best for all of us.
As the years passed, cracks started to appear in Pat and Eugene's marriage, and the relationship crumbled.
Eugene was very controlling. To him, she couldn't do anything right. He didn't want her going anywhere. He wanted her to stay at home.
In 2008, the couple called it quits.
Following the divorce, I could see a difference in my mom.
And I think there was a sigh of relief to her that she could finally live life freely instead of being under the thumb of Eugene.
Now, all that is left is a trail of blood and a list of unanswered questions. As news of her disappearance spreads, the community unites in their search for Pat.
We got as many people together as possible. We lined up and we started walking, looking for any signs of Pat.
Pat was very well loved in the community.
It was obvious from the support that the community gave us.
Hundreds of people came out, 50 feet apart, spread, walking through the fields. It gave you chills to see something like that.
While the search continues, detectives ask Pat's kids if there was anyone who might have wanted to hurt their mom.
Rita and I both looked at each other and then looked back at him, and I said, Eugene Kimmey is the only one we know of.
My mom did not have an enemy in the world other than him.
As investigators learn more about Eugene, a disturbing picture begins to emerge.
He was often drunk. A lot of times he was very argumentative, and his drinking was never under control.
The descriptions I received from everyone was that he drank too much, that he was just a very unpleasant person.
My mom found out that Eugene had cheated on her, and that was something that truly broke her heart.
All of us told her, get out. Nobody should have to put up with that. So that's when she decided enough was enough.
Pat divorced Eugene a year before she went missing.
Mrs. Kimmey ended up getting the property from the divorce.
Pat had won a very large settlement with the alimony payments being made.
There was a huge payment going out every month to the sum of about $2,300. So he was bitter about that.
Eugene said it was unfair, was constantly complaining to everyone the amount of money he had to give her, and Eugene didn't think she was entitled to anything.
Detectives also learned Eugene had made sinister remarks about his ex-wife.
People in the community told us that he had made comments about how he wished she was dead.
He was constantly saying that he wanted her gone.
He had actually been telling people that he would like my mom to just disappear.
Was Eugene so enraged at the divorce that he followed through on his threats?
I don't think there was much question in anybody's mind of who had a motive to harm Patricia Kimmey.
Coming up, investigators uncover a web of alarming secrets and lies.
You could tell that the woman was filled with guilt.
He lied in every interview. Why did he do this if he wasn't involved in this case?
His story, it changed every time.
While family descend into despair.
We were all very fearful at that point.
I knew it was not going to turn out good.
Before the truth blindsides everyone.
She was fighting for her life, kicking on that ground.
You really couldn't make up a case like this.
It's been 24 hours since Pat Kimmy has mysteriously disappeared from her home in Horton, Kansas, and the signs point to foul play. Police already have their first suspect, Pat's ex-husband, Eugene Kimmy.
He was upset about the divorce settlement, and he made it very clear that he disliked Patricia Kimmy. He hated Patricia Kimmy. He wished harm to come to Patricia Kimmy. And he would tell that to anybody that would listen to him.
Had Eugene finally made good on his threats? Detectives question him at the Kimmy sawmill.
Eugene Kimmy denied that he was involved with Patricia's disappearance.
He said, yes, I'm upset after the divorce, but he says, I would never harm her.
Evidence at the crime scene indicates Pat was abducted around 7 p.m. So investigators ask Eugene where he was during that time.
He said he went to sell logs that day. He came home, he ate supper alone, and then later on he turned a movie on TV and watched it until he fell asleep. And so he really had no one that was with him at any time during that period that could vouch for him.
Unable to rule Eugene out, police obtain a warrant and search his home and sawmill, but find no evidence to tie him to Pat's disappearance.
We had nothing concrete to put him anywhere near the scene. There was no evidence of anything to put Eugene at Miss Kimmy's house that night.
Eugene Kimmy is put on the back burner. As the search for Pat continues, a telling discovery is made about a quarter-mile from her house.
One of our deputies located a camouflage baseball cap.
It was just out among the weeds, and it seemed out of place.
It had a writing on the front that said Sailor's Insurance Company. I instructed him to photograph it and collect it as evidence.
Knowing there had been heavy winds in the area overnight, investigators expand their search and find more evidence just a half-mile west.
They find a money clip that had some U.S. currency attached to it, and that currency was soaked in blood.
We found a bag containing some rifle shells that had blood on it. There was coins on the roadway that had blood on them. All these items was collected and sent for DNA testing. And then just to the east of that, there was an area in the grass that kind of been pushed down.
They noticed that the grass was matted down in an area about the size of a person, which led them to believe that a person had been on the ground in that location. And then as they examined that closer, they began to find blood drops. That was when they knew we have a second crime scene.
Because of the blood on the money clip, the blood on the coins, the activity in the grass that had blood on it, we knew something significant happened at that scene.
I and Larry both thought, this is not good. We were hoping to find her, but I just knew this is not going to have a good resolution.
Police unearth one more chilling piece of evidence down the road.
Law enforcement called me telling me, we just found Patricia Kimmy's dentures. And I was asking them, well, how in the world do you know they're Patricia Kimmy's dentures? And they said, because her name is printed on the inside of them. And it clearly was her dentures. I don't think anybody doubted that there had been foul play.
When we found the dentures with their name on them, we all thought that, yeah, this is probably a homicide now.
The grisly discovery forces Pat's family to face a grim reality.
We knew that she had been there and that something really awful had happened to her.
My heart just sunk because then I knew something was terribly, terribly wrong.
While the roadside evidence leads back to Pat, nothing points to a killer until an officer sees something close by.
There was a receipt found. The receipt had a date and time stamp on it.
It was dated November the 6th, the night of Patricia's disappearance. It was from a Walmart store in Hiawatha. We was able to go up and track down who the person was that done this transaction.
Police bring the customer, a local teen, down to the station.
We asked him what he was doing in the area, and he said he went out there with his girlfriend. They were sitting there under the stars, had a cooler, left the area, forgot to put the cooler in the vehicle.
And he had returned to that location to retrieve his cooler. He was able to then describe seeing a very unique vehicle in the area that was stopped along the side of the road in the vicinity of Mrs. Kimmy's home. And that vehicle was unique because it was a red pickup truck that had dual wheels on the back.
What the teen tells police next leaves them stunned.
He also described that as he drove past that truck on the side of the road, he could see what he believed was a pair of legs in the deep grass, and that those legs were possibly kicking, as if someone was laying on their back in the grass and kicking their legs.
We all thought that, yeah, someone was fighting for their life, and as close as it was to Mrs. Kimmy's house, we immediately thought, well, that was probably Pat on the ground.
It was a good break, and it was something that we knew we were going to have to start focusing on and find out who was capable of kidnapping and murdering Patricia Kimmy.
Investigators working the no-body homicide of mother of four, Pat Kimmy, have found a witness who might have seen a roadside attack the night Pat disappeared.
He was out with a girlfriend, and on the north side of the roadway, about where the items were found that had the blood on them, he saw a red dually pickup.
He said that there was someone on the ground kicking. He didn't really see anything other than that, and he left the area. I think at that point he was young. He was scared of what was going on, and really, I don't think he knew exactly what to do at the time.
There was no reason for him to be making that story up and put himself at that location when he didn't need to. So his story was pretty believable.
The gal that he was with, we talked to her.
He had accounts for everything that he had done that evening. His girlfriend backed up what he said, so we had no reason to believe him of being a suspect.
If that truly was Pat Kimmy in the grass, detectives know it's imperative to identify the driver of the red dually truck.
To have a description of a red dually pickup was really a strong lead.
A dually pickup truck is a pickup with dual tires on the back of it.
My first thought was, we've got a potential suspect vehicle that we need to start looking for.
As police search ownership records for red dually trucks, they receive the forensics report from the crime scene.
The DNA on the sailor insurance hat was found to be that of a male.
Investigators were able to obtain DNA off of the sweatband on the inside of that sailor ball cap. But you can't just take DNA and say, whose is this? You need a comparison.
No match is found in the criminal database for the ball cap DNA, but other evidence is more conclusive.
The money clip, the coins, the blood on everything found at the second crime scene, all was that of a profile that matched a female.
And so we were able to get the DNA and be able to positively identify that blood as belonging to Patricia Kimmey.
While the results are encouraging, detectives still don't have a body or a primary suspect. Then, a week after Pat vanished, her daughter Rita remembers something.
I was just thinking about my mom and pulled up her picture to look at on the computer. And there was a memory I had of her talking about a man who had worked on her house. His name was Dane.
Mom had a contractor at her house, Dane DeWeese, and she had some work and she had to call him back a couple times because she wasn't satisfied with it.
Pat had had a contractor from Abilene, Kansas come up and do some work on her fireplace. And she had some disagreements with the contractor that something wasn't correct.
So I got to thinking about that and pulled him up on the computer, and he had a police record. So that was very concerning. Just thinking about the fact that he had been around her, he had access to her home.
And what really raised a flag with him is when we found out he drove a red pickup. Well, we're on to something now.
Could Pat and Dane have gotten into an argument about his work, causing him to violently lash out at her? Rita alerts police about Dane, and they immediately bring him in for an interview.
He was very cooperative, told us that yes, he has a red dually pickup.
He told us that he had done some work for Patricia Kimmey's house. He was honest in telling us that she was not happy with some of the work. He volunteered to come back and fix those items, which he did, and had thought he had settled everything with her.
He thought Pat was a very good person to work for. He said he got it corrected, and Pat was very appreciative that he got it corrected, and he said that he thought that everything was okay between him and Pat and that he would never harm Pat.
Mr. DeWeese did not really have an alibi. He had nothing to back up his whereabouts for the night before. He told the investigators he was at home alone, but he didn't have anybody that could vouch for that. And he quickly became our prime suspect.
He allowed us to search the truck, which we did.
When investigators search Dane's truck, they make a disturbing discovery.
We did find blood in the back of the truck.
We were a little alarmed when we saw the blood in the back of Mr. DeWeese's truck.
Could it be Pat Kimmey's blood? And could this be the evidence that blows the case wide open?
This looked like a very serious matter and indicated that he perhaps was the person involved. And the blood in the back of the truck really made it suspicious.
It's been a week since Pat Kimmey was abducted and likely killed. Police suspect contractor Dane DeWeese is involved and have found incriminating evidence in his vehicle.
In the pickup, we did find blood in the back of the truck.
Mr. DeWeese volunteered that he had recently been hunting for deer, and there might have been some blood and fur left in the back of the bed.
We took samples from the truck of the blood to confirm his story.
Detectives rushed the samples for DNA analysis.
They were able to determine the blood actually was from a deer, and it was not human blood.
After that, we searched down everything we could for DeWeese and never could find out any information that he was even in the area of Pat Kimmey. So we had to eliminate him. It was hard to take at the time.
We really thought we were onto something with the Dooley pickup, but there wasn't enough to go forward with.
It was very disappointing. Right back to square one we go.
With no new suspects, investigators focus on finding the owner of the red truck and the sailor insurance hat found on the side of the road.
We talked to the Sailor Insurance Company to get a list of people that would potentially have access to a sailor hat.
Investigators were able to get a customer list and find a list of possibilities of a red dually pickup insured by Sailor Insurance.
Detectives asked Pat's family if they recognize anyone on the list.
They had us go down through the list, and Roger Hollister's name stuck out. He's bought lumber at the sawmill before.
They said Roger Hollister had done business with Eugene Kimmy and that Roger Hollister drove a red dually pickup.
Roger Hollister was reported to be somewhat of a hothead, kind of a person who got upset a lot, kind of a person who could be violent.
He was not well liked, not a nice guy, and it was a major red flag for us.
Believing Roger could be a major suspect, detectives rushed to the Hollister farm to interview him.
We were able to contact Mr. Hollister at his house. He was wearing a neck brace. He was walking with a cane.
We thought, he's a frail old man. There's no way he could be involved in this.
Roger Hollister told investigators that he knew Eugene Kimmy. He'd taken logs over to be processed at the sawmill.
But he had never been to Pat's house. He didn't know Pat.
He denied any knowledge at all of the disappearance of Patricia Kimmy.
Detectives asked Roger about the ball cap and the dually truck.
Roger was very cooperative. He said that he did have a Sailor Insurance cat, but it got tore up by his dog. And he said, yes, I had a red dually pickup, but he told us he sold that truck to a guy by the name of Rick for $2,000 before Pat disappeared.
Investigators asked Roger to account for his movements the night Pat was abducted.
He said that he'd been at his home the whole night. His wife left late evening hours and drove to Kansas City to be with her daughter, and he was home alone the whole time.
Even though Roger had owned both a Sailor Insurance hat and a dually truck, detectives don't believe he's their guy.
We did have some doubt that Mr. Hollister could have been the person that done this because he had a neck brace on. He could barely walk.
And they said he appears to be so physically challenged, we don't think that he would really even be capable of dragging someone out of their home and hurting them.
At that point, we didn't think that Mr. Hollister could have been involved in this case.
Detectives dismiss Roger Hollister as a suspect. A month has passed since anyone last saw Pat alive, and investigators are no closer to locating her killer or her body.
There was a lot of pressure to find Patricia Kimmy. The investigative team wanted to find her. The family wanted to find her. The whole community wanted to find her and get justice for Patricia Kimmy.
It was getting frustrating, thinking that we might never find her, never get this case solved.
2 months into the case, police catch a break when Pat's son Tony and nephew DJ show up to the police station with shocking new information.
They told us that Roger Hollister went over to the Kimmy sawmill and he wants to talk to Eugene, but Eugene wasn't there. The employee at the sawmill, DJ Kimmy, told the investigators that Roger said to him, "Tell Eugene I'm here to collect. I want my money."
And DJ says, "I don't have your money. I don't know what you're talking about."
And Roger then said he had taken care of it in reference to my mom.
And he said, well, I'm just here to recoup my money, that I took care of the subject. And he also stated that the subject will never be found.
It was a major break in the case. We were on to something now.
Police are investigating the disappearance and homicide of 58-year-old Pat Kimmy. Now, 2 months into the case, they've learned from Pat's family that Roger Hollister has come looking for money, claiming he got rid of Pat.
When Roger said the subject will never be found, referring to my mom like that, we were all very fearful at that point.
Pat's nephew, DJ, tells police he remembers he saw Eugene and Roger talking at the Kimmy sawmill one day.
We believe that maybe Eugene was drinking, did not like the situation he was in with his wife, and maybe he made a comment to Roger, said he wanted to do away with his wife. As we confirmed, there was numerous comments made to numerous people to that effect.
He didn't like the divorce settlement, lost land, he was making alimony payments. That's a strong motive for murder. So our thought process was maybe he was drunk, and maybe Eugene told Roger, I'd pay somebody to get rid of my wife.
Despite having previously ruled Eugene out, police circle back and check his finances for any evidence of a payout.
Law enforcement went through Eugene's bank records, and there was no activity on his checking account.
We saw no indication that money was actually paid out. We executed a search warrant on the sawmill of Eugene Kimmy, but we really didn't find anything that would substantiate Eugene's involvement in the case.
Undeterred, detectives focus on tracking down the red dually truck Roger had once owned.
Initially told us that he sold that truck to a guy by the name of Rick for $2,000. We searched a VIN number for a pickup belonging to Roger Hollister, but it was not put in the name of anybody by the name of Rick. And we found out that the truck was actually sold to a dealership in Tecumseh, Nebraska.
Investigators learned that Roger bought the truck back from the dealership 12 days after Pat went missing.
He lied about his truck being sold. Why did he do this if he wasn't involved in this case?
When police bring Roger to the station for another interview, they cannot believe their eyes.
He was not the same person as he had been. The first interview with Roger, he wore the neck brace, he walked with a cane. But now he comes through that door like there was nothing wrong with him whatsoever. We were very shocked. I don't think anything at all was wrong with Roger Hollister. I think he just was using that as a front for everything that was going on.
Anytime a suspect is untruthful with you, that just makes them look all the more suspicious.
Roger tells police he went to the sawmill to buy lumber and denies speaking to Eugene or DJ about Pat or any money. But when pressed about the truck, his story changes.
Roger said that he'd sold it to a group of Mexicans that were passing through the area. He did not know their names or anything about them. That sounded fabricated.
His story, it changed every time.
With suspicion growing, detectives ask Roger for a DNA sample. When the results come back, the news is conclusive.
We found out that the DNA on the Sailor insurance hat belongs to Roger Hollister.
That was a very big moment, because now we know that he was at that crime scene. Because his DNA is found there, we knew he was involved.
Detectives now have enough probable cause to serve a search warrant on Roger's farm.
We took a track hoe out there, and we was able to pick things up, dig around.
And what was found was parts of the truck. A lot of the stuff had been buried, and it's been burnt pretty severely. And of course, we couldn't get DNA because of the fire.
And the VIN number matched Roger Hollister's truck. It was then obvious that Roger Hollister had destroyed that truck and was attempting to conceal it.
At that point, we had what we thought was a very good circumstantial case against Roger Hollister. We searched the property, but we still didn't have a body of Patricia Kimmy. Our prosecutor kept saying, we need a body.
Then, a few weeks after finding the truck, investigators get some alarming news.
I received a phone call from investigators who said, "You're never going to believe this. Roger Hollister and Rebecca Hollister were just involved in a vehicle accident. The investigators said that the vehicle had turned in front of a semi-tanker and hit head-on.
Rebecca was seriously injured to the point that she had to have surgery. Roger, who was the driver of the vehicle, didn't sustain any real serious injuries.
And if the truck driver hadn't paid attention, there's probably a good chance they would have both been killed.
Detectives rush to the hospital to speak with the Hollisters. And Roger's wife, Rebecca, tells them she believes her husband was trying to kill them both.
Why is he trying to commit suicide? Why is he trying to kill Rebecca in the car?
I think that the walls were closing in, and Roger knew it. Roger knew we were closing in on him.
There was an arrest warrant issued for Roger Hollister for attempted murder on Rebecca, and he was charged for that.
Now in custody, Roger says he wants to tell police what really happened to Pat Kimmy.
He said that he was with Eugene when the kidnapping occurred.
He said, yes, his truck was used in the crime, but Eugene forced him to go.
He said that he just drove Eugene Kimmy and that Eugene Kimmy killed Patricia.
And so is Eugene still involved somehow? We don't know for sure.
Detectives bring Eugene in for another interview.
He admitted that he did not like the situation he was in with his wife, but he says, I would never harm her or kill her.
Eugene says, oh yeah, I may have mentioned that I would like to see her dead, but I didn't offer money to Roger to kill her.
Eugene Kimmy did not deny that he'd made those remarks, but that he had said it more in anger, you know, just a person running their mouth that's upset with their ex-spouse.
Detectives have no solid proof Eugene was with Roger that night, or that any money ever changed hands.
As a result, we were never able to tie Eugene Kimmy into the murder, never had sufficient evidence to charge Eugene Kimmy.
Police release Eugene. Then, 6 months after Pat's disappearance, Rebecca Hollister asked to meet investigators.
She was very upset. You could tell that the woman was filled with guilt. She told investigators that she knew where Patricia Kimmy was, and she wanted to take them to the body.
It's been 6 months since police believe Pat Kimmy was abducted and murdered. Now their prime suspect's wife, Rebecca Hollister, is at the station and wanting to talk.
She told investigators that she knew where the body was, and she told them that the body was at their farm.
We were shocked. I think she was realizing that she better come clean, and I think she decided to do the right thing by giving us the body.
Rebecca Hollister was offered immunity if she would cooperate with us and be truthful. We would grant her immunity from prosecution.
Rebecca claims her husband, Roger, told her where he buried Pat Kimmy on their 40-acre farm.
She took us to the property, and she says, I think she's down there, and points towards a ditch. And sure enough, exposed to everybody was about a 6 to 7 inch section of spine.
We found a piece of the vertebrae with some ribs attached, and we found another short piece of the ribs.
The body was burnt, the body was cut up, the body was crushed.
I mean, he destroyed her body. And lucky enough, we found enough of the remains to identify her that we knew we had Patricia Kimmy.
One of the officers told me that her body had been dismembered and burned. And that was very hard, one of the hardest days.
When we recovered the body, I felt we had a very strong case. I felt we had the right man. I felt we had the evidence to convict him.
On June 4th, 2010, Roger Hollister is charged with first-degree murder. At the trial, prosecutors present a picture of what they believe happened to Pat the night she was murdered.
Roger went to her house, got her to open that door, and when she did, Roger pushed through, was able to grab Patricia, subdue her, and take her out to that truck. He got her into that truck and took off down her driveway. As he turned the corner onto the gravel road, she somehow got away from him. She jumped out of that truck, and he pursued her into that ditch.
There was a confrontation. I think she put up one heck of a fight, and she was fighting for her life when she was killed, kicking on that ground.
We believe that Patricia Kimmy died on the side of that road where the evidence is found, and that he then got her into that truck, returned back to his farm, and tried to burn the body, and then chopped up what was left and buried it there on the side of the creek. And then he went and tried to get his money. We were never able to recover any financial records indicating any money changing hands. But yet we knew that had to be the motive because Roger Hollister had no other reason to kill Patricia Kimmy other than hoping to being paid by Eugene Kimmy. We believed that maybe Eugene was mouthing off about paying to kill Patricia and that Roger heard that.
I think that Eugene made one of those drunken comments that he would like to see his wife dead, and Roger acted alone and went out and done it.
That was a very big shock. You really couldn't make up a case like this, and it really was like something written for TV, but it wasn't, it was real.
To cut a body up and burn a body up, that's one of the most evil things you can do.
It was very unexpected. There was a lot of twists and turns, but ultimately we just wanted justice for Mom.
On March 1st, 2011, a jury finds Roger Hollister guilty of murder.
At the sentencing, Roger got life without the possibility of parole, so we knew once he was in prison, he was not coming out until it was a pine box.
2 years after being convicted, Roger Hollister dies in jail from ill health.
You know, I don't know if that will ever seem fair that he spent such a short time in prison. It wouldn't be enough if it was 1,000 years, for taking our mom's life. I think we all just hope to be half of the person that she raised us to be.
Our mother was a saint on earth, the kindest woman you'd ever meet. There's no doubt in my mind she's in heaven with God above.
You just miss her every day.
From the 9-1, switch that over, that's the young blonde. I was at the West Coast, now I'm in the East Coast. Saw you when